Hey guys, welcome to Traffic Light Reviews. My name is Michael Munoz.
And I'm Steven Munoz, and today we're shifting gears towards television. We are talking about a show called 13 Reasons Why, mainly because it is a show that is entirely complete. The last season premiered this year, and so it has a little extra caveat for us as we are fathers with newborns and toddlers, and this show touches upon something that we never went through when we were in high school. It does follow in the beginning a story of a young girl who commits suicide based upon 13 reasons, and she puts those reasons onto a cassette tape and then has them delivered to each person that she's referring to in those cassettes. It's a very intricate story. It's one of those that make you realize that your actions can have lasting repercussions, whether you understand them or not. And so the first season of the show really took us through that, to really understand what happens to kids nowadays, as it's something that parents either not are completely oblivious about, but may not catch. Because a lot of times we've seen this even through the history with different kids that have committed suicide ever since I was growing up, that the parents sometimes never knew why. They thought they were a great student or so on and so forth. Never saw any trouble. It touches also about teenagers and drug use, teenagers and alcohol abuse. The show really, unfortunately, as bad as it sounds, it does touch on everything in the realm of up to how incredibly horrible teenagers can face. And with each season, they touched on more and more things, different aspects, and how it impacted the lives of the students that are in school. And the one thing I know, that when I went to school, I was lucky. I didn't go to a school with metal detectors. Although I live in New York City, it could have been the case. And I went through some of these things, but now as a parent, as I'm thinking about how I'm going to raise my child, and realizing now that kids go through the same things in different ways, and they have to be able to combat and overcome their problems a lot differently than when I went to school. This show was an eye-opener for me, mainly because even though the first season is mainly about suicide and sexual abuse, there's one character that has a drug problem, and almost all the kids drink. They make it seem like common practice. Then with each season, they then touch on, a school shooter, a kid that wants to just take revenge and kill everybody and gets guns and stuff like that. Kids getting abused by other kids in school and what it does to them emotionally. On top of, all throughout it, with love stories of teenage love and how bad it can go there, whether it be gay or straight. Then it kind of takes a turn in season 3 where I almost felt like if they just had season 1 and 2, that would have been just fine. They sort of bookended their story, and we got all we needed to get, even though it didn't end well. It didn't give you a happy ending. And so season 3 sort of brought in a new twist and turn, and you started to feel the show change, but it really was more so for the characters rather than what they were trying to make you feel. They were trying to tell more of a story, more of the complete high school life, of the different things these kids go through, the very different lives, and how they intertwine even more. It's almost like the kids are forced to be friends in a way because of this occurrence that happened, and you see them come together and collectively lie to their parents and keep things a secret, and that sort of builds up even more in season 4. That now the parents even have to combat and they have an app where they can spy on their kids' phones, and then they do active shooter drills in school. It really ups the ante with each season as to what the kids go through, what the parents go through, and how they're all trying to understand each other, when you realize that pretty much throughout the whole show, nobody wants to understand each other. Nobody communicates effectively, and everybody just has to deal with the horrors and repercussions because of it. The unfortunate part is that's what real life is today.
The show deals heavily with teenage suicide, rape, mental abuse, bullying, physical abuse, and school safety, gun control, things that a lot of these children today are made very aware of. Sexually transmitted disease, sexuality. The show touches on all these adolescent issues that I remember facing as a teenager. I did go to school with a metal detector, and I felt it was necessary. Uh, the the show's hard to talk about. The first season aired on Netflix, and by the end of its tenure and through word of mouth, a lot of people were very upset by the show. A lot of people found the show to be very uncomfortable and a bit too real. My own wife could not watch past the first 15 minutes of the first episode when we were watching it. So I continued to watch the show on my own because I'm always interested in someone's story. I'll always be interested in stories. But some stories may hit too close to home for certain people. Myself, along with a lot of other people that I went to high school with, have had a moment where we contemplated suicide. We've had moments where we've contemplated violence, sometimes gang violence, sometimes, violence against each other, sometimes physical violence that we see, drugs. Drugs is a very big part of high school. I was very fortunate that I was not surrounded by it, but it was there. The kids today are experiencing pretty much the same things we were experiencing, but on a bigger level. The use of social media and the internet was a growing, almost non-existent thing for me in the 90s. But now it is prevalent for all our children. All these high school kids have smartphones. They have access to the internet, and bullying has now become so easy that you can do it indirectly. And it's very hard to combat a bully when you can't see their face or hear their voice. And the show touches on that. The show has a slew of actors, all young, some of them adults playing teenagers, being very honest with the characters that they are portraying. By the time the second season airs on Netflix, every episode now has a disclaimer. In fact, there's a disclaimer before the show starts, letting you know exactly what you're about to watch. And now, when I try to rewatch the show, they've included that in the first season as well. The first season tells the story of Hannah Baker. On the very first episode, she's already dead. She has committed suicide, and now 13 audio cassettes have surfaced and are being passed around through all the 13 people that are involved with her suicide. And it's a really hard show to watch. By the time the second season comes, just like you said, we get to hear more of the story. Different characters go through different things. A lot of it's tough. A lot of it has to do with, coming of age, struggling with sexuality, struggling with bullying, struggling with self identity, struggling with the idea of the future. And how do you express yourself as a teenager? How do you express yourself to your parents, to each other, to your teachers? Where do you find help? And there's too many issues facing children right now in schools that have nothing to do with their education. And their education should be the main priority. But now we've shifted gears in this country, and we focus less on education and more on safety. And I think that's a problem. The show touches on that in all seasons. I was a big fan of the first season, but not in a, oh my God, this show's so good, you have to watch it, it's so great, let's get together on a Saturday night and have popcorn. I thought it was a very important story to tell. I think how raw the show is, how honest it is, needs to be shown. The story needs to be told this way. There were a lot of complaints about the explicit nature of some of the sexual abuse scenes that were done, especially in the first season. I I'm not an advocate for explicitity, whatever that word is. I'm not an advocate for gross images and perverse stuff being shown for the sake of being perverse. I do think that certain stories require an honest, raw depiction so that the audience can understand exactly what's happening. When you shy away from certain issues and water it down, I don't think parents or elected officials will ever truly get the full severity of these actions. And the show tells you the truth. And it's hard to watch and it's hard to listen to. To this day, my wife has not seen the show. The show for me, the second season was just as uncomfortable, maybe more so, because in the second season, we witnessed the rape of a student in real time. It's not a flashback, not something that happened before. It's happening right now. And that rape sets off something in this child. And the next thing is an attempted school shooting, which is something that's way too common in the last 20 years, and it's something that we should not be worried about, but we are as individuals in this country. I really wasn't a fan too much of the third season because I felt that the third season took a detour from reality of the severity of these situations and became sort of an entertaining thriller type show. How can we get away with this murder? Who done it mystery? It was still very serious. Um, it was great to see certain characters come to terms with their abuse and their abusers and take the necessary steps to move forward as survivors. So in that respect, I did like season three. Season four was again so hard to watch because all I keep thinking about is my children. I keep thinking about that day when I have to send my children off to school, and I have to send my children off to school with the idea that they're going to a safe environment, a trusted environment with adults who will take care of them and teach them while I'm not around, while I am working to provide. I entrust this institution to take care of my child for this period of time. I don't understand how any parent does not live in fear 100% of the time because even our schools are no longer safe. And I know it feels like we may be preachy right now, but that is what the show inspires in the people that watch it. You can't watch the show and not feel something. You can't watch the show and not empathize with certain characters. I know I was bullied. Um, I know I wanted to kill myself. I know I struggled with sexuality. And to see that, in these children now, 20 years after I've graduated high school, and to see the level that they go through in terms of bullying, because now it's cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is not something we went through. It's not something that we could ever understand because it was not existent. Now it's a part of these children's lives, and it's something that we as parents have to try to understand. We need to find new ways to communicate with our children. That's one thing you definitely learn from the show. We definitely need to learn how to communicate with each other effectively, just like you said. We definitely need to figure out how to keep our children safe and educate our children. We're focused on safety and not education. Now we have to do this equally. Before, school was a safe institution. For some people, having metal detectors in their school is a foreign idea. I always felt it was a good idea. Keep the children safe. But in season four, we see the children get the metal detectors put into the school and they are just thrown for a loop. They can't handle it. They feel worse. They feel unsafe. Now, in an adult's brain, Having this in the school makes sense because we are keeping the guns out of our school. The whole gun safety, who can get guns, gun rights, Second Amendment, it it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's a lot to digest. Um, I recommend that people watch the show. I think it's a very important show for people to watch, especially in America, in the United States. I am very, very uneducated as to the school system and the gun control issues in other countries, but I do know what's going on here. Uh, Growing up in New York City, it was always an issue. We always had to figure out ways to protect ourselves, keep our kids safe, and teach our kids the best that we can. Um, the show touches on all that, and it was nice to see that something like this exists. It is important. Me growing up after high school as an actor, I've always felt a deep passion to do work that not only entertained people but also educated people. And this show does both. And I know it sounds terrible to use the word entertain with a show like 13
Hmm.
Reasons Why,
Right.
but it is entertaining, but not in that awesome, great like Saturday Night Live, funny kind of way.
One of the things that I read up about the show over the years and people's complaints, especially because when you're talking about teenagers and you're trying to be realistic, um, people always want to say, "Oh, that didn't happen in my school," or what have you. And of course, not all of these problems. It could seem very much scripted and convoluted when you take every single type of problem and put them into one school. The funny part is that is in some schools in America. Like you cannot shy away that not every single bad thing that happens in this life is not happening in a school. There are some schools in the country where every single negative thing that can happen to a child is happening to at least one of the students in that school. And yes, in good neighborhoods or what have you, some people will look at this harshly and say this is too graphic because they're not used to seeing that. They're not used to seeing these things. That's why in season 4, when they put the metal detectors, they're like, oh, what's happening to our school? Because they're not used to that. I went to a specialized high school in high school, but I did not get the best grades in regular studies, and I had to go to night school for 1 year in order to graduate. And in the night school I went to, there was metal detectors, you know, and you just know, like especially because you're in New York City, like to hear a school doesn't have metal detectors in New York City, that's a big deal. It's very commonplace that in most schools in New York City have metal detectors. So much so, the relationship with the guidance counselor in season 1 and 2, as portrayed that the guidance counselor was one of the reasons why the main star took her own life in season 1 because the guidance counselor didn't listen. That wasn't there for that child. That what could that guidance counselor do? I remember thinking, was my guidance counselor ever there for me? Because I talk to people around the United States, around the world, when I tell them my graduating class in high school was 2,000 kids. 2,000 kids. I never met my guidance counselor. And I tell people that, yeah, in my class I had 32, 34 people. And nowadays, in schools in New York, there's about 40, sometimes even 50 people crammed into a classroom. And they're like, wow, I thought we had a lot with 15. Like there are very much different cultural imbalances that this show tries to address as much as it can. I guess the only thing it didn't it addresses that much was gang violence. It's probably the only thing that was missing from that show in terms of the complete teenage experience in America of what a teenager can go through. Um, so when it comes to how much of a scripted show this is, how much of that it's trying to, it's pushing it too much with this or with that. I really felt it had to show as much as it did in those instances, almost beat things to death too much about this particular topic to get the point across. Because people wouldn't realize it any other way. Um, then the season where they get the metal detectors, on top of that, they do the active shooter drills as well. Now, this is something I never went through. Um, I have no clue what that's like.
Nope.
The funny part was, my wife sat down with me when that episode came on, and she watched it with me. Our son was taking a nap, and all I'm thinking is, yeah, I don't even know how I would have reacted back then, because and she's watching it, and she said, "Oh, they're probably doing a drill. It's probably the cops doing this. They do this around the United States now." She was reading into this because I was telling her that this was a concern of mine, that I didn't know that they're considering this a drill to make everybody lock their doors in the class for an undetermined amount of time, make the principal say over the loudspeaker, "This is not a drill, stay in your classroom," to then scare kids, all because they're trying to simulate what an actual active shooter might sound like. That they use fake bullets and they shoot them into the air. They jiggle the handle because you're taught not to open the door for anybody. So they go to each door and the drill isn't complete until they go to each door, and then that's it. I have no clue what that's like for a kid. That when they show one of the main characters freaking out because of it, I didn't know that in real life. My wife told me, she stopped the video. She said, "Steve, did you know that a child actually killed themselves during the middle of an active shooter drill because they got too scared?" This happened in the United States. That thought to me that in trying to give your children knowledge of something so shocking and fearful ends up backfiring with a child's life. Yes, this show is relevant. Yes, it might seem a little too much, but we might be doing too much with these things. And I don't think we realize it that way. And yes, when it comes down to what's best for the kids, we're sort of figuring it out as we go, just like we are with COVID-19. Nobody has the right answers, and we're all just trying to do the best that we can. And when it comes to giving our children an educational experience that is supposed to help them progress and grow, we get caught up with everything else around it. And we forget that they could be going through so many more things, that we actually have to listen to them and we actually have to care about every single thing that they do. I don't know about you guys, but growing up, our parents, they had limits. My father's from Puerto Rico. Our father's from Puerto Rico. Our mother grew up in Spanish Harlem, and there was a certain point in my life where my parents just couldn't help me with my homework anymore. So I had to figure it out on my own. And I know a lot of other people go through some situations where their parents don't help them at all with anything in school. So sometimes kids are left to figure it out on their own, and that's where we get something as potentially dangerous as situations in 13 Reasons Why, where kids, when they are left by themselves, when they are left to their own devices, that they have to figure things out on their own when they're only 14, 15, 16, and they don't have all the answers, and then things can get just worse from there. And I feel that this is a topic that we don't address too much with our children, because we think they'll come and talk to us. We think we've built up that relationship so much. And this show just made me realize that children in their first reaction might feel not to talk to their parents. And that's what's scary as hell to me. And the idea that my child would rather choose to not tell me something important than to talk to me. That was like a motif in this show.
Yep. Yeah. It's it's hard. Even when there are certain characters in the show that really true appear to be great parents. They're attentive. They want to be involved in their children's lives, and some of these characters just can't seem to communicate with them. And sometimes people have a way of talking about their parents, that your parents may be unapproachable. I can't talk to my mom. I can't talk to my dad. They'll never understand. Sometimes even if you can talk to your parents, that's the last person you want to talk to. And I hope that parents watch this show and see that they need to take a more active approach into their kids' lives. And I hope that kids watch this show and know that if you have loving parents, that are willing to be there for you every step of the way, I hope that they don't have this same kind of fear when it comes to being honest about their feelings, about what's going on in their lives that they may be afraid to talk about. It's hard. The show doesn't have the right answers. We don't have the right answers, but it definitely makes us think a lot about the questions, and maybe we can come up with right answers that work for us. So, if you got a chance, yeah, check out the show.
And the only thing I know for certain that yes, I'm giving this show a green light because I do believe it's important for children to watch together with their parents. Um, I don't think they should have to watch the show and figure it out for themselves. I think kids should watch the show with their parents to have that discussion, to talk about things, to clear things up, so that way both sides can better understand each other and form better relationships so they can progress in the way that they need to,
I agree.
not the way that they're forced to.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely give the show a green light as well. Watch it for yourselves. Watch it for your education. Watch it to help someone. Watch it to for your knowledge, because you never know who might benefit. You never know who might be around you that just needs somebody to listen.
Well, that's going to be all for our episode today. We can't thank you guys enough for watching. If you have any comments on anything we said or anything about this show, by all means, feel free to leave it below. We'd love to talk more about this with anything that you feel specifically when it comes to teen issues and/or issues in the schools and with at home. And also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys in the next video.